Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Arcana Force Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile for July 2022. This is the deck used by Sartorius in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime. It has a really interesting way to play, where every time one of the Arcana Force monsters is summoned, you flip a coin, and then you gain a monster effect based on whether it was a heads or tails. More beneficial are the heads, coin tosses. Normally the tails coin tosses don't benefit the player too much. So we have a lot of support to help with this playstyle, and our main go-to boss monster is Arcana Force 21, the World, as the monster that lets you gain an additional turn when you use it. I really do like the changes I've made since the last update to this deck, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for our main go-to monsters, our first one is Arcana Force 21, the World. When this card is summoned, you toss a coin, and if it's heads during your end phase, you can send a monster you control to the graveyard to skip your opponent's next turn. You have to send 2 monsters with this card, but just being able to skip your opponent's next turn just gives you this 3100 attack point monster and more resources on the following turn. So if you have this set up with the World on the field, it's really scary, and it's very easy to summon out the World with some of the cards we run in this deck for the playstyle. For more of the stall power in the deck, we're also running 3 Arcana Force 0, the Fool. This card cannot be destroyed by battle. It cannot be changed to defense position except by a card effect. And when it's summoned, you toss a coin. If it's heads, negate the effects of spells, trap, and effect monsters on the field that target this card and destroy them. And tails, negate the effect of your opponent's spell, trap, or effect monsters that target this card and destroy them. So you have 2 different options with your Arcana Force, the Fool. Negate the effects of your opponent's spell or traps that target this card and destroy them, or negate the effects of your spell or traps that target this card, depending on what you go for. So with this one, you really do want to get more of a tails option. I think that's more of the theme of the Fool as well, but also just being able to not be destroyed by battle. You can special summon this card out in defense position and then just have that wall to rely on also until you get more of your plays. I also run 3 Arcana Force 6, the Lovers. When this card is summoned, you toss a coin. If it's heads, this card material is 2 tributes for the tribute summon of an Arcana Force monster. Or if it's tails, you cannot tribute summon Arcana Force monsters. So the tails is definitely a negative for this card, but being able to get out the Lovers and then just have your tributes right then and there to summon out Arcana Force 21, the World, that much more easily is why we run 3 of this card. So you always have this easy resource to then also preserve some of your other cards to use for the World's tributes. And then for the last of the 3 ofs, I also run 3 Arcana Force 14, Temperance. This is a situational card you can run in the deck. If you wanted to have a hand trap spot, I went for more of a pure Arcana Force build for this lineup. But if you wanted to run like Effect Veiler or Ash Blossom in the deck, you could always take out Arcana Force 14, Temperance. This card's used mostly for its hand trap effect. During either player's turn, you can discard this card. You take no battle damage from the battle. And when this card is summoned, you can toss a coin, and the effects are, decided based upon what coin flip you got. If it's heads, you half all the battle damage you take. If it's tails, you half all the battle damage your opponent takes. So this is definitely just going to stay in your hand most of the time for the hand trap option of preventing battle damage against your opponent. Very useful for that, but still having the option to summon out this monster and then just reduce any of the battle damage you take, which it will, obviously guard you and your attacks against your opponent with this card. So you really don't need too much in terms of defense protection, unless they get a really huge monster that's like 8,000 attack and they swing into Temperance, and you can half the damage as long as you get your heads off the coin flip. For some of the lower numbers for the Arcana Force monsters we run, I run 2 Arcana Force 4, the Emperor. With this card, when it's summoned, toss a coin. If it's heads, all Arcana Force monsters you control gain 500 attack. If it's tails, all of them lose 500 attack. So it's more of a power boost. Being able to get the World up to 3,600 attack is definitely very scary with this card. If you do get tails with this one, it's not the end of the world, no pun intended there. But with it, you will have some weaker cards on the field, but it's not like it takes away your tributes or, has any of the damage your opponent would take. And I also run 2 Arcana Force. I'm starting to forget the numbers for these ones, but this is 18, the Moon. When this card is summoned, toss a coin, and heads during your standby phase, you can special summon 1 Moon token to the field. It has 0 attack and defense, and is just a level 1 token. Or if it's tails during your end phase, select 1 monster you control and give it to your opponent. So you definitely do not want to get tails with this card. Being able to just give your opponent the world is very, very scary, but being able to give yourself a token that can be used for tributes is very, very useful. So if you're going to use Arcana Force the Moon, make sure you have your spell set up on the field to make sure that you never land on tails with this card. Or if you do, make sure you find a way to get it off of the field, which we do run plenty of link monsters to at least link summon this card away off on the field. So as long as you get another monster, you don't have to worry about its end phase effect. And I also run 2 Arcana Force EX, the Light Ruler, another boss monster. You have to send 3 Arcana Force monsters from your field to the graveyard to special summon this card. And when it's a special summon, you can use one of these effects, with its heads being the tail flip. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can target 1 card in your graveyard and add that target to your hand. Or if it's tails during either player's turn, where a spell, trap, or affect monster's effect activates that targets this card, you can negate the activation, destroy it, and then this card loses 1,000 attack. So the Light Ruler really doesn't have much in terms of a negative playstyle. It's mostly just for the situation you want. Do you want to recycle from your graveyard, or do you want to stop your opponent's cards at the cost of lowering this card's attack, which it does have 4,000 attack, making it kind of a powerhouse to get over, and in the meantime being able to stop more and more of your opponent's cards. And then for the last of the monsters, I just run 1 Hecatrice. This is a searcher for Valhalla, Hall of the Fallen, which is an easy spell card to use to then special summon fairy monsters from your hand onto the field without having to use for the tribute. Just 1 additional copy of this card for searching out those cards needed. And that is it for the monsters. We'll now move on to the spells. I run 3 Light Barrier. This is your field spell for the deck. During your standby phase, toss a coin. If the result is tails, the following effects are negated until your next standby phase. When you summon an Arcana Force monster, you choose which effect apply without tossing a coin. If an Arcana Force monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you gain life points equal to the destroyed monster's original attack. So what's useful with this card is you do have to get heads on this card, but once it resolves, you have your Arcana Force monsters at their full power, being able to just have the Arcana Force choose the effect that you want, whether you want to get tails with the Fool, or tails with the Light Ruler, heads with the World. You have all of this available to you for this card. So the field spell is definitely one of the necessities to get on the field as quickly as you can, and that is why we're running 3 of it. Another very good card that we run for the deck is Arcana Reading. You toss a coin and apply this effect. If Light Barrier is on your field, you can choose the effect instead. If it's heads, you added 1 card from your deck to your hand that has a coin toss effect, except for Arcana Reading. Or if it's tails, your opponent adds 1 card from their deck to your hand. You can banish this card from your graveyard immediately after this effect resolves to normal summon 1 Arcana Force monster. You can only use each effect of Arcana Reading once per turn. So the play with this is to set up the Light Barrier on the field, then just be able to choose the effect you want, which you will definitely go for the heads, being able just to add that card from your deck to your hand, and then being able to banish this gives you the additional normal summon, so you can set up your Arcana Force the Lovers, and then tribute it out to summon out your Arcana Force the World without having to use any of the other spell setup. I also run 3 Valhalla, Hall of the Fallen, with this card being the Searcher off of Hecatrice. Once per turn, you can special summon 1 fairy-type monster from your hand. You must control no monsters to activate this effect and resolve it. This gives you access to the good majority of your cards. Aside from the Light Ruler, which needs to be special summoned through its own means, you can get all of your different Arcana Force monsters out onto the field using this card. So just being able to special summon out the World onto the field without needing the tribute saves room for you then just to summon out other Arcana Force cards. Being able to even just use Arcana Reading for the banish for another additional normal summon can give you your 2 tributes there. For some of the lower numbers for the spells, I also run 2 second coin toss. When a coin toss is performed, you can choose to redo the coin toss. If the toss involved multiple coins, then flip and redo all of them. You can only use this effect of second coin toss once per turn, but it is a continuous spell. So along with it and your light barrier, it can remain on the field, giving you 2 chances to flip heads with light barrier on the field, and also just being able to, if you don't have light barrier, redo the coin flips for a coin toss, being able to redo that flip. You want to use it once per turn, so make sure you make it count with the coin toss you want to redo. I also run 2 Foolish Burial Goods to send your Arcana reading to the graveyard much more quickly, to give you the banish in your graveyard, just to give you the normal summon for it much more quickly. And for the one-ofs for the spells, I run 1 Monster Reborn. Once again, just like Valhalla, Hall of the Fallen, you have no limitations with special summoning, so you can just special summon the world back onto the field using this card. Also, 1 Terraforming for searching out the very vital Light Barrier field spell from your deck to your hand. And lastly, I run 1 Change of Heart. Now, this is for the tribute, being able to, during your end phase, being able to either use that monster you take from your opponent to tribute out the world, keeping your own monsters to tribute for it, or just having that resource needed to use that play to even tribute out some of your other Arcana Force monsters. And that is it for the spells. Moving on now to the traps. I run 3 Reversal of Fate. You select 1 Arcana Force monster you control. That monster's effect is now treated as the opposite of the coin toss result. So depending on if you need a particular effect, like with the Light Ruler is the one I use this with the most, being able just to change that card effect, or if you're in a bad situation with the Moon and no other monsters on the field, if you can switch it to the token option to then give you a Moon token on the field, you have this option with the 3 of trap that we run, Reversal of Fate. I also run 1 Arcana Call. You select 1 Arcana Force monster you control, banish from your graveyard, or from either player's graveyard, an Arcana Force monster, and until the end of the turn, the selected monster's effect becomes the banished monster's effect for the same coin toss result, giving you just additional Arcana Force monster effects in your graveyard as sort of a reliance on those monsters. It's a one-off tech that I've been testing out, but I definitely do like using it in the deck, with the last of the traps just being the 1 Metaverse to then once again search out the field spell needed for your Light Barrier. This works during the standby phase, so being able just to activate it onto the field during the end phase of your opponent's turn using Metaverse gives you that standby phase play of having the coin toss used to then hopefully get the beneficial effects of your Arcana Force monsters. And that is it for the main deck. We'll now move on to the X deck. I run 1 Link Karibo. This is for using with the Fool, if need be, just as a Link 1 resource to go into. Same with Relinquished Anima, to have a monster that can take your opponent's monsters. 1 Salmon-Great Almirage. Same premise with all of these. If you're just stuck with 1 the Fool on the field to summon out. And I also run 1 Barricade Board Blocker to recycle the field spell. 1 Lena the Light Charmer for taking our opponent's own light monsters while using our own to summon it. Hit Potion Engen, we can boost up the world's power even more with this Link 2 monster. And I run 1 Underclock Taker, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Nightmare Cerberus, 1 Herald of Mirage Light for the fairy light type monsters we run, 1 IP Masquerena, along with 1 Nightmare Unicorn, and then for the Link 4s, 1 Apollosa and 1 Boral Sword Dragon to finish off the extra deck. And then as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, Valhalla, Hall of the Fallen, is definitely a great one, because with it, you can just activate this card. If you have the world in your hand, you can special summon it out. If you didn't have the world in your hand, if you use the Arcana reading play and you were able to search it out, setting this card up in your graveyard can be one play there, or even just sending it to the graveyard with your Foolish Burial Goods, sending the Arcana reading to the graveyard, giving you the world on the field with the special summon. You can then have your 1 go-to normal summon with your Arcana Force of the Lovers, just normal summoning this card out regularly, and then using the Arcana reading in the graveyard to banish it to summon out 1 additional monster for a normal summon on the field. This will give you your 2 monsters needed to tribute for the world to have your opponent skip their next turn. One of the other plays that you can use is just like the Valhalla in the Fallen, but more on the lines of the Arcana reading. You can use the card in the graveyard to banish to summon out out your lovers, and then distribute out the lovers to summon out the world with that tribute. Since you have to get the coin toss right, remember that with Arcana Force the lovers, which is why it's very vital to either have your field spell ready to go, or even with the option of second coin toss. With Light Barrier on the field, you'll get to choose the effect you want for Arcana reading, and that'll be just the search you want to get for that particular card. And more of it will come down to what resources you can have. Having the Change of Heart in your hand to take your opponent's own card can also be very useful for tributing out some of the monsters you run in this deck, especially if you just take that monster. The Temperance is only a level 6, needing 1 tribute to get this card out and then perform the same following coin toss. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoy the video. Like I said, I always love updating the Arcana Force deck. It feels like it's a deck that's definitely overshadowed in a lot of ways. Maybe we'll get some new support for it. I think we have a good majority of the Arcana cards, but we did get the one spell that helped with the playstyle of the deck, so it's only a matter of time. Maybe we get like a revamp of the world or any of the other cards for the specific Arcana that they are for. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.